Hi everyone, welcome to After Class with Ballet for All,
a podcast by two passionate adult ballerinas about all things adult ballet related.
and some random thoughts in between.
We're so glad you're here.
So grab your water bottle
Or a cup of coffee.
and join us for a quick chat after class. Hello, Anna. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Good to see you.
Today we are going to talk about are online lessons really worth it? And why I want to talk about it is because most of my online students, or like all of my online students, they find me all for the same reason. And is not because they don't have in-person classes, but because they are missing something on those in-person classes. And you, Hannah, will agree on that with me and my student, which is a new student from the Netherlands. She loves her in-person classes, but when she gets there, it's just a tombe para glissade sur le chat, blah, blah, period, music, please. And you're like, what? And that's it. So online lessons are not the solution for you to have a social ballet class, because also you don't do it just for the technique. You want to be in a social environment. But the online lessons, if you look at it from the point of view to clean your technique, either if you're coming back from a long break of not taking ballet classes or you're coming as a beginner, online lessons have so many positive things for you. Cleaning technique, improving your vocabulary of ballet, just going one-on-one and making sure that you're not missing how this starts, how this finish, why this movement, where does it come from, where do I go with this, which is really important. Not just because we're going to be good ballet dancers within our own limitations and our physical level, but you want to be safe.
Yeah, and I think online classes, I think especially with adults, one thing I've noticed even just in being in class with other adults, and I feel the same way, is adults, I think even more so than kids, we really want to understand and like wrap our mind around how to do something, why to do something. And I think in-person classes, a lot of times the pacing is just different. And I think there's great things. I think they're very valuable. And if you can take them, you absolutely should. But I also think there's great things and invaluable things about online classes that are only going to support and help you get more out of your in-person classes, because you do get a different, I don't know, every online class I've ever taken has a different level of like feedback, Q&A almost between the teacher and the student. And I know like in our classes, I love that they're small enough to where we can really stop and ask you for clarification, ask you to really break things down. So I just think that online classes have so much to offer really any level of dancer. But like you said, if you're coming back after a long break, or if you're just starting and the in-person experience is just feeling really overwhelming and fast-paced, online classes are great.
Yeah. So a specific example will be when you have balances and pas de bourrée in the same exercise and you haven't looked at them separately, you haven't looked at them for a while, and you are in a group class, and the teacher said, okay, we start balance, tombe, pas de bourrée, plie, pas de bourrée, pas de bourrée. You will have a hard time to separate one from the other one because they almost look exactly the same, but they are not. And they move almost the same, but they don't. Meanwhile, you come to online lessons, I can see that you're not doing the step that I asked you for. I'm like, okay, let's slow down. Let's go back just to one step. Let's do it a few times. Let's go to the other one. And once you put them together, they're like, oh, I can actually differentiate one from the other. And then you don't create that bad habit of, okay, I just don't know what balances or waltz are, and I'm just going to do whatever. I just want to go with the exercise. Yeah. Meanwhile, you could actually be in an online lesson, be like, oh, okay.
Yeah, there's been so many light bulb moments for me of things where I was just kind of fumbling through them in person. And then in our online classes, it was something that I either asked you, hey, can you break this down? Or was something that you just happened to, break down. And it gave me so much clarity to then be able to go into an in-person class where, it's different. Like when you're taking online classes, you're usually in your home So it's a much less stressful environment.
Yeah.
Like I know stress is like has kind of a negative connotation, but it's just the reality. Like it's a different environment than when you go into an in-person class and you might be in a fairly crowded room. So you're thinking about not bumping into the person next to you and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that girl is so good standing in front of me. I'm so intimidated. The music. Like there's just a lot more stressors, I think, in in-person classes. And so it's so great to be able to kind of work out the kinks of certain steps in a more focused, comfortable environment on your own, and then to be able to go into your in-person classes with more confidence. I think that's been, for me, one of the most valuable parts of doing our online classes.
True. It's like as a ballet teacher, I remember I was just not long ago, I was doing my Silver Swans certificate, and I remember that they were doing it for a while online, and then finally they did it for first time in Australia over 2 months ago. And everyone just started talking like, oh, online lessons, they were not the answer, and we don't like them. Apparently, I'm the only one teaching online. And I'm there and I lift my hand and I say, well, first, online lessons gave so many people the chance to do ballet because you are a very lucky one, Hannah, that you can go in person and online. So you get the satisfaction of both. But some of my students haven't been able to find a studio near home. Yeah. And the only chance to try ballet has been online. So that's number one. Number two, you can have the one-on-one for a reasonable price compared to going one-on-one in-person lessons. Then you actually have the time to learn a slower pace, everything that you might already know, but you have questions with. So when I was explaining that to the teachers, they were like, yeah, but online lessons, you don't feel the touch and you don't feel, I'm like, yeah, you don't. But if you go to where you get in the feel and the teacher is fixing that leg and that rotation and she might be lifting your elbow, but then that's all you get because you don't get the explanation of the step because you're just rolling through with the class and going with the flow. And sometimes you're in person, you feel like if I ask, oh, the position of the head, no one is asking the question. Everyone has the same doubt for sure, but no one is brave enough to ask. So you don't want to ask either. So you think it's a silly question. And all this, the little rabbit hole that we go through, like, it's silly, I don't want to ask. Yeah. So you might come to the ballet class online, group class where you feel a little bit safe, 4 or 5 students, or alone with me or your other teacher. And you're like, may I ask you, is it silly to ask if the head in this position is right? And that's not silly. That might be what is messing it up with your entire period because you have the head in the wrong position. Yeah. So there is those silly questions, but sometimes we feel a little bit intimidating in certain settings where we don't want to ask the right questions. So I think the more I have private lessons, the more new students I have, the more I feel like this was a topic to talk about.
It's almost like demystifying it for people that haven't had online classes, because I do think, a lot of people would just kind of write off online classes if you've only ever done in person. And like I said earlier, I think in-person classes absolutely have their place. I mean, one of the main things I love about dancing in a studio is just space. Most of us are fairly limited on space in our house. And so most people can't even do a Grand Allegro at home, and like not having sprung floors, like depending on what your flooring is, it might not be safe to do a lot of jumping and things like that. So it definitely has its place being in person. But I think to kind of write off the whole institution, so to speak, of online classes is a mistake, because I think you can still get such valuable training online, especially if you're in the right setting for you. Like, I think finding a teacher that is really going to meet you where you are on your journey. Every teacher teaches differently. They kind of tend to break things down to a certain level. Everyone kind of has their tendencies. And so I think finding a teacher that really speaks to where you are, it's just a great way to get the most out of your in-person training, because all you're doing is giving yourself a better shot at making the most out of your in-person classes when you're also supplementing with training at home online.
Yeah, that's a great point. Seeing online lessons as a supplementary training. It's like you don't just do the like you are doing point classes, Hannah. Do you only count with your ballet class to be strong for your points, or you do extra ankle strengthening, supplementary training to strengthening your ankles so then you can be on point? So that will be that other point exactly. Like that online lessons could be that supplementary training that you're missing to get ahead with your next and on your next step forward in your in-person classes.
Yeah.
Something else that if you're doing online lessons already and not with me, with someone else, make sure, or if you're going to try, because I make sure that every time I'm going to meet a new student, I always send this short questionnaire, which looks very silly, but it asks you, have you learned online lessons before? How long have you been learning ballet? Are you familiar with the following words, which will be a little bit of ballet terminology? But even if you've been learning for 3 years, doesn't mean that you know what a Grand Allegro is. You don't know or a pirouette and the dance. So that will still give me more clues. And the last 2 questions are, what are your goals from online lessons and what are your goals from each class that you take with me? So that's something that tells me so much about that new student that I know that the class I'm preparing is a very specific class for that student. So if you're planning on having online lessons and it isn't me, make sure that if you don't receive a questionnaire, just write to that teacher, hi, I just want you to know that this is my level. These are my goals, just so both of you can be on the same page. And once you go to your ballet class, the teacher is ready. They will appreciate it. I don't think they will see that as you overstepping, because that helps so much to get to know you before we actually meet in person. So do that.
Yeah, it's such a helpful question. I mean, the only thing I can relate that to is when I used to teach salsa, and I loved knowing what people's goals were, because it's different. You know, it's like if your goal is to be a great social dancer versus your goal is to perform, like those are different. You know, like I'm going to approach your training and your teaching slightly different, you know? And so I think like the more information that you can give to your teacher is really helpful. And like, I know for you, Elena, like, you're very aware of what our goals are as students, and like you work really hard, I know, to incorporate meeting those goals into our classes, which is, it's so fulfilling. Like it makes the journey so fulfilling because there is like that different level of like personalization to our classes, even our group classes. Like even though we're working as a group on certain things, like you know what our personal goals are. And so I think that that's a really another thing that's great about online classes, specifically with Ballet for All. You should totally come take classes because it's awesome.
Yeah, it is pretty awesome.
It is. We have a good time. We have a really good time. So
yeah, we do. And we promise to keep the groups small. Like we will promise that. We are welcoming few more of you, and then we create a second group. But yeah, are online lessons worth it? I would say definitely yes. Also depend on how open-minded you're coming to class. What are your goals? And if you really know, what are you doing the online lessons for? So that's another thing. You have to know what you're doing it for and let your teacher know so you can get the best out of it. But they are definitely worth it.
Yeah. And you know what, too? Like one thing I really love about online classes is that I take way more classes because I can take them online than I would if all I could do was in person.
That's true.
Yeah. Like last week, I was saying earlier, I took 8 classes in 7 days, and 6 of those 8 classes were online. And like I never, just because of the reality of driving to and from the studio, and like it's just a much bigger thing, you know, than it is to just like pop downstairs and take a class. So I think the reality is you will probably take more classes if you are open to the online experience.
It's a totally different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you are thinking about jumping into online class, but you are not sure about how to set up your space, we actually have a whole episode that we recorded. Gosh, I think it was like maybe our 3rd or 4th episode. We'll link it because it walks you through kind of everything you would need to know to set up your space to get the most out of taking an online class. So don't be intimidated by setup. That is,
we are
definitely
here as well.
Yeah, we're here for you. And if you ever want to join our online classes, they are absolutely worth it.
Yay.
So we would love to have you. And you do get that social component too. Like it's different than in person, obviously, but because you're not leaving your house and going out to a studio or whatever. But like we've built some really special relationships.
Right?
Yeah, like there's people like it boggles my mind that you and I have never actually met in person. I've never met Maggie in person, and it's like these people that are really friends that I love and appreciate, and it's all online.
So,
Like I never would have known you guys if it weren't for online classes. So you also have friendships waiting for you on the other side of online classes. So jump in, make friends. You'll be surprised at how much you'll connect with people even through the computer.
True. So we will see you next episode. If you have any ideas for future topics, any questions, just leave it anywhere in the social media and make sure that me and Hannah are tagged so we can try to help you and answer any of your questions.
Thanks for listening, guys. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to After Class with Ballet for All.
Join the community on YouTube and Instagram, or come dance with us, our weekly Zoom classes for adult ballerinas like you.
Links included in the episode description. Special thank you to our sponsors.
See you next time after class. Podcast produced by Mission Bridge Media.